Untitled, the series for entrepreneurs in Japan. Listen, learn, and apply the experiences of others to your entrepreniponial pursuits. Join us. Today, episode 4 of Entrepreniponial, Entrepreneurs in Japan. I'm very happy to welcome my guest, who is Catherine Gronaur of Thrive Tokyo, trainer and executive coach. Catherine provides cross-cultural education and orientation programs for professionals in Japan. She holds a degree in international business and culture from Sophia University, a certificate in training and change management from ATD, and coaching certification from IIN. She grew up in both Japan and the United States and has firsthand sensitivity to the cultural differences and challenges that new expatriates in Japan have on a daily basis. Catherine, welcome to Untitled.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this.
Okay. So my first question is the question I like to ask everybody to get started. Why are you entrepreneurial? Why are you an entrepreneur in Japan?
Yeah, so I really wanted to help people with health coaching. That was actually the first thing that I had thought of when I was getting into business. So, I had a lot of experiences with my own health, and I was like, it'd be really cool to go out on my own and start a business around this. And I think because I was physically located in Japan, it just made sense to kind of start with the resources that I had. And, I wasn't really thinking about moving anywhere else in particular. So, yeah, I would say that's really the combination is just, I was already physically here in Japan. I had roots. I was looking to settle even beyond where I was at that stage. Yeah, and I wanted to start a business.
Okay. How long had you been in Japan at the time that you started considering starting your business?
Oh, that's how long was I here for? I think probably around 6 or 7 years. Probably about six or
Okay.
7 years. So it's, for many people who come to live in Japan who are maybe not, local natives. So even though I'm half Japanese, I grew up going back and forth between Japan and the United States. I think kind of after 5 or 6 years, that's really the point in time where people are like, okay, how long am I actually going to be here for? Maybe you initially came for the first 3 to 5 years to accomplish something and, thought of going somewhere else beyond that, or didn't really have a long-term vision for being in Japan. So for me, it was really like a very big turning point where I'm like, okay, am I going to actually have roots here in Japan and, try to really integrate my life even more and have a business here? Or should I really consider other avenues? And I chose to really stay and be here.
Great. Great. And so you said health coaching. So what
Yeah.
is it that you intended on doing, and what is it that you are doing today?
Yes. So my intention at the beginning was when I first came to Japan officially, I was learning a lot about macrobiotics, which is basically the Eastern versus Western forms of holistic nutrition. And I lost about 20 kilos. And yeah, and so I was like, I had struggled so much with my diet before coming to Japan. And even though a lot of the concepts were very similar to what you'd hear in other countries, I felt like the way that people were talking about it was very different. And it gave me a totally different way of thinking about my health and, how I wanted to take care of myself. And so I was like, what, I really want to share that with other people. So I already had this idea of like how to share Eastern versus Western values and how that applies to people and how they can incorporate that in their lives. And so I had, while I was working at my previous company, I was already in the process of getting my health coach certification via the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So it was about a year-long certification program. And yeah, so my intention initially was just to help people with health and wellness. And, what I do now is I do cross-cultural integration for foreigners who are new here in Japan. And I also do things like orientation programs. So a combination of cross-cultural training and orientation. And I do that either at corporations from a B2B perspective. And I also help individuals who tend to fit in the scope of being maybe senior level, people in senior level positions who are here with a specific skill set to be in Japan. And there's kind of a gap between the two, but they're definitely really interconnected. And the reason I wind up getting into what I'm doing now is I found that while I was doing health coaching, that the primary issues people were facing were cultural assimilation. So, the emotional struggles or the feelings of needing to cope really came down to not really knowing how to integrate with living in Japan. And I also found just more tangibly that people were looking to get healthy, but they didn't even know how to shop in a grocery store. So, they don't know, maybe like you're reading in English that you need chia seeds and a ketogenic diet, or, you need to be a vegan, or, all these different things that you learn about in English from the media outside of Japan. People found that they weren't really finding the resources that they needed here to do the kind of diet or the lifestyle that they wanted to have. So yeah, that's really how my business wound up evolving. And even though I primarily help people with cultural assimilation, I think that the forefront of the business, my company's called Thrive Tokyo. So it still has that spirit that I intended to start with, which is about helping people, feel really good about their life here and the balance that they have with their health.
Great. Help us understand this then. So, having a good, healthy lifestyle, being assimilated to the new environment in which you come. Absolutely. I think everybody who lives and works in a country that is not their native, or even, living in your own, native environment, of course, you want to live healthy. We can all understand this. How does this become a business, right? How do you then get people to realize, wait, this is important? And rather than doing it on your own, working with you, Catherine, is going to expedite everything that they need to achieve and want to succeed. How do you turn that into a business that is appealing to people and brings them to you as your clients?
Yeah, so I feel like I kind of started segueing into doing what I'm doing. So there wasn't necessarily a moment where I was like, how am I going to get people to buy into this new idea of, helping with cultural assimilation? But I think the first factors that I felt really confident about was that there are already people out there who are cross-cultural trainers who are doing training at companies. And so I was like, okay, so there is, a market for this, or about helping people understand the differences in culture. And so I knew that that was already an avenue that I could pursue. And so I think the other element was just trying to help people from the one-to-one side as well, or helping them understand that this is really not just about understanding a culture, but about, what part you play into it, or how these things affect you as an individual and how you want to simulate on your own. So yeah, I think just from my perspective, it was really about recognizing that there was a market already available, because there are other people who do this and just, in either similar or kind of parallel ways, and then just figuring out how I can kind of incorporate that into what I was already doing.
Okay. All right. So let's now talk through the business side, setting up the business side of this. So, and when was it that you began Thrive Tokyo? How many years ago?
So I began in officially 2016.
Okay.
So I had left my company maybe around February, March-ish of 2016. And I got my coaching certification by end of April that year. So I would say I officially started from maybe May 1st. So I'm
Okay.
just finishing up my 5th year, and from about next month, it'll be going into my 6th year of business.
Great. 5 years. So that's definitely a first great milestone.
Yes, I did the math right on that, right? I'm going
Yeah.
into, yes, I think I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So let's now walk back into your past. About 2016, you're getting ready to leave a job in another company.
Sure.
You've gotten your certification. What did you do at the very outset? What were some of the most important things that you did to get yourself established as Thrive Tokyo?
So I actually don't think I did really important things to get myself established back then. If I'm reflecting back,
Okay.
I don't think I did the things I probably should have done. So what I had been doing was my primary focus at the time was just get a website going, just
Mhm.
have a digital business. So I was really focused on having a digital or a global type of platform. And the
Hmm.
reason is because, again, I still wasn't 100% certain to what extent I wanted to be in Japan. And since I wanted to help people, with diet and, East-West nutrition, I was just
Yeah.
focused on helping anybody and everybody who is interested in holistic health. So to start off with, I wasn't necessarily targeting like locals or residents in Japan necessarily.
Okay.
So yeah, so my first thought was, okay, I really like this idea of having an online business. I can be mobile if I want to, and,
Hmm.
I can have this online presence. So I was, again, primarily focused on just getting a website started, getting a blog going, starting up my social media accounts, starting to, do email list building. Those are the elements that I really started with
Okay.
first.
Well, I think you're actually rather forward thinking, because even in 2016, it's digitalization is happening, but of course now everybody is talking about DX, and of course that's what the corona pandemic has done, is that people are realizing that what you've just said that you started to do 2016 is
Yeah,
absolutely essential for today.
yeah.
So what was it that made you realize, is there anything else that you can say that made you realize that the first step is really creating a good website, creating an online presence?
Mhm.
um, any further insights into sort of what you were thinking at that time?
Well, at that time, that's what I was thinking because I wasn't necessarily thinking of working with people locally per se. I just kind of
Mhm.
wanted, like, I wanted to be more of like a thought leader, so someone who talks about health from a different angle or poses certain questions in a different way to have people elaborate on and think about. So it was really just about like getting the voice or the message out
Mhm.
there. But and as you mentioned, all of those things that I had learned about digital, like having a digital business and digital marketing and branding and all those things really helped carry through the pandemic time. I had already been using
Yeah.
Zoom for years before people had even started to hear about what it was during the pandemic. So yeah, that was like a really easy transition. But I think from a business perspective, so if we're talking business, we're talking about like making money, that is probably not the first thing you have to do. The first thing you have to do is just go out and get a client, right? You have to just
Right.
find someone who wants to pay you for your service. That is literally what a business is. It's about, finding someone and having that exchange of value. What I was essentially
Mhm.
creating at the beginning was just more of like a personality or a brand, or,
Mhm.
that's what I was creating. I wish I had some screenshots I could show you. I think it might be on on an old laptop, but I have some. Originally, I had my website was called Girl on Bliss, so it wasn't even
Mm.
Thrive Tokyo at that point. And I had a lot of fun doing things like photo shoots with different branding elements that I'd been using, and I was just really involved with trying to create like this message around health that I wanted to create. So yeah, I think like from the perspective of like, if you ask yourself like what is a business, the business is about the exchange of value and providing either a
Mhm.
product or a service for someone. That is not what I was starting at the beginning. I was just
Okay.
starting like the branding or who I am, and I didn't really get into the whole what am I going to sell part later
Yeah.
until later.
Yeah. So I want to come back to branding and marketing, because I think
Sure.
you're doing that so well, and that's so key, right? So let's just table that for a moment. But let's think also, at the very early stages of establishing the business. Many times people might create an incorporated, company. Is that what you did from the beginning, or how do you operate? What is your operating,
Yeah. So I did
entity?
not establish an official business. I'm still registered now just as a sole proprietor.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is for me, it was actually like I didn't have to do any hunting around for information on this. The Japanese side of my family had a family um, tax accountant. And
Hmm.
so they just put me in touch with him, and he said, oh, well, at this stage of your business, until you're making like a certain amount of cash, like for tax purposes, just go ahead and report all of your revenue as like your individual income as a sole proprietor. So I really did not spend pretty much any time on that element of like starting a business. It was just like, okay, that's what he told me to do. So,
Hmm.
and yeah, I just kind of went from there.
Okay. All right. When you're doing your business as now a sole proprietor, do you think about accounting on a monthly basis? Are you closing books on a monthly basis, or do you look at things on an annual basis? How does that
Yeah,
work for you
I
in,
think
in
at least
accounting?
for me at the stage of business I'm at right now, I'm still looking at a monthly basis. So
Mhm.
I'm still
Okay.
kind of looking like month to month, or also like I try to set goals that are quarterly goals, and then
Hmm.
I do kind of like month by month tracking. I haven't really
Okay.
thought annually yet. So yeah, I would say like probably the setting quarterly goals and then doing the kind of analysis or seeing where you're at like on a monthly basis is what I do.
All right. So now let's talk about what you said a moment ago too. What is the real doing business? Doing business is about
Yeah.
finding that client and having that
Yeah.
first client that is willing to take your services, and at some point you provide them the invoice and you get paid. Let's talk about how you got that very first client, and what it felt like to get paid for services.
Yes. So, to be honest, the first sale I made, I don't actually remember because I had the digital, because I was doing business digitally, I was really focused on selling things like online courses as opposed to doing
Hmm.
one-to-one work. So I
Okay.
know that people like my initial sales were someone or a group of people purchased online courses that I had. And so, that was kind of happening initially in my business. But the first actual sale that I had was actually my first corporate client. That's the one that
Okay.
I really remember. And what happened was I was trying to segue from doing the online world thing to working with people in person and getting into corporate. And a mutual friend, Jason DeLuca, he
Hmm.
reached out to me and he said, hey, I overheard this company saying that they are having some challenges with their wellness or something. Here's the person's info, look up their number and call them and talk to him. And I was like, okay. And I felt like I had this assignment because I didn't want to let him down by just avoiding it altogether, even though I
Yeah.
was scared out of my mind. But I also
Mhm.
hadn't really done like a cold call, like to someone I've never talked
Yeah.
to before. And on top of it, Jason said, make sure, like, don't tell them where you heard about that you heard it from
Mhm.
me. So he said, so I was like, how am I going to say, like, I'm calling you up out of the blue, I'm not going to tell you how I heard about you, but do
Right,
you need
right,
my
right.
services, right? Yeah. And so that was my initial call. And yeah, I was really nervous about it, but it turned out because they were looking for somebody, they're like,
Mhm.
okay, let's like have some, coffee and just have a chat. And I was just really completely scared out of my mind just going there. I remember like my heart was like beating out of my chest when I was just entering
Mhm.
the office building, and I was like sitting there
Yeah.
sweating, like waiting for this guy to show up and have a conversation. Um, yeah. Oh, bye, Catherine. Thanks so much. And yeah, so he came, we had a conversation, and I remember feeling kind of awkward because even though I had had so much knowledge about the topic and I had experience doing things like digital courses where I've done
Mhm.
instructional design around how to deliver content, I hadn't really actually delivered it in a in-person setting at a
Right.
corporation. So there was kind of this element of feeling like I was very knowledgeable, but because I was green on this first experience, it felt
Yeah.
weird, really like trying to ask for this payment and this exchange. And for this thing I was doing for the first time. But ultimately he said yes and hired
Mhm.
me. And I just remember leaving that office like, what, wow. It was a mixed feeling, like wow, I just got a sale, but also, oh my god, how am I going to fulfill this
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
service offering? So it was like kind of that mixed feeling, like just immense excitement and an immense terror, like all wrapped in
Yeah.
one, essentially.
All right. But you overcame it, and you've been overcoming it for
Yes.
over 5 years, right? So
To be
now
honest,
let's
yeah.
talk.
Oh, I was gonna say,
Hmm.
like, to be honest, I feel like I'm still like that in some ways. Like, I've made so
Hmm.
much headway, and things like that are like piece of cake, just talking to someone about what business to
Yeah.
do and services. So that's become really easy, but there's still other milestones that I want to have in business. And I feel like each of those additional milestones, you still have the same kind of feeling for each one that you meet and you clear. Mhm.
Sure. Let's talk about future milestones in a moment. But let
Yeah.
me let me now try to get you to think from, what you've overcome within these 5 years, right? And particularly in learning about pricing your services. That very first service, you make an offer and you even wonder if this is the right number.
Right.
How have you evolved your way of thinking, or how have you evolved your pricing strategy over the years
Yeah.
to do what's good for you and to do what's good for clients?
Yeah, so this is really the key question for anybody listening right now.
Mhm.
My first thought when I was starting business was I was only focused on just getting somebody to pay for something. Like just get the word out there, just get somebody to pay for something. That was only where my headspace is at. And I was pricing things based on what I felt comfortable pricing or based on what I thought was a market price. And so, for example, at the very early stages of business, when I was trying to do like workshops, for example, I was charging about 2,500 yen for a lunch workshop. And
Mm,
for me, as someone who, at the time I was in my mid 20s, and for me, going to a lunch event for 2,500 yen seemed kind of normal. And you get like a lunch
right.
and you can hear somebody talk. And,
Mhm.
so I was pricing things kind of between 2,000 yen to maybe 4,000 yen on the high end, just for kind of like these group
Okay.
workshops. And
Not so much. Not,
not
not
so
a
much,
very
but
high
at the
price.
time I was like, I
No.
felt bad charging like for a group workshop or a group meetup. I felt bad charging anything more than 4,000 at that time, for individuals to
Mhm.
come participate in things. And it was just taking so much time and energy and effort to try to do all the marketing, to get people to know about it, to try to get people to sign up by the deadline, to get the people who
Right.
signed up to confirm they're actually coming,
It's a
because
lot of work.
heaven forbid they don't show up, then you don't get the payment, right, from the individuals,
Right.
and you've planned for this event to have x amount of people, and then you don't know how many will show up. So it's just like such an immense amount of time and energy that goes into that, and not to mention all the platforms that you have to invest in, like Facebook ads, or whatever marketing tools you're using to get people to
Yeah.
sign up. And
So at
so
2,500 to 4,000 yen, are you
yeah,
you're probably not even breaking even, or are you breaking
I
even?
don't think I was. I mean,
Right.
for 2,500 yen, like I've had anywhere from, 5 to 10 people in a workshop, let's say. So if you have 5 people, and then the lunch, because I was doing lunches like on a Saturday or Sunday, the lunch
Right.
prices are higher on weekends at most
Hmm.
venues than they are on weekdays, because they don't do like a 1,000 yen lunch set. They might have 1,600 yen for the same
Right.
items.
Right.
So I was making like 900 yen per person. And then, let's say I was making like 4,500 yen total if there's like 5 people show
Yeah.
up. And then I have to pay for, social media platform tool or something like that. So I was really like not having any money left over. And so,
Let's say so, Catherine. At the very
yeah,
beginning, it's with that kind of pricing model, you're running you know to say it bluntly, it's more like a hobby than a business at that pricing model, right?
exactly. Yeah, that's
Right.
pretty much what it is. Like I was really thinking about it, and I was like, the companies that do these kind of like workshops and stuff, either they are someone doing it as a hobby, or
Yeah.
a company that's only doing it as like a step one of their funnel for
Mm.
other bigger
Yeah.
ticket
Exactly.
things that they want to
Yeah.
sell. So I mean, unless you have like a huge mailing list with a huge following, and you're like an event planning like company that just has, people going into these things all the time, it's just the numbers just don't really make any sense. And so I was actually listening to a kind of like this woman who I admire. We're the same age, but she went from like scrubbing toilets and then trying to figure out how to start a business to
Mm.
becoming a copywriter. who's like a low paid copywriter, and then being a very high paid copywriter. Then the next thing you know, she like got into making $1 million. And so she had to hit all of these milestones too. And one of the things that she said was, you have to actually reverse engineer the amount of money you want to make annually, and then base your prices off of those numbers. So essentially, instead of thinking, oh, I think people will pay 4,000 yen for a group workshop, or 12,000 yen for a one-to-one call, or, 50,000 yen for 1 hour training, or whatever it is. Instead, you have to think to yourself, okay, how much money do I actually want to make, like in the course of the year? And that includes both your personal expenses and your business expenses. And that's like at a bare minimum. So maybe you can think of 3 numbers. Like the bare minimum number is like, what do I need to just like survive with business and paying my bills? And then maybe your second number is like to have some comfort level. So like you can afford to pay for people's presents for their birthdays and Christmas, or you can go out to dinner with people, or you can buy clothes that you want to have, or, do pampering or whatever it is. And then maybe your high number is something like all of your future goals, like, being able to pay for a house, or your kids' college funds, or your retirement funds, or whatever it is. And so you need to like think of like what all those numbers are, and then think, okay, so if that's the number I want to hit, how much do you have to make in a month? Based off of that number. And then you have to think to yourself, how many hours can I actually work over the course of the month? Because when you're working in a corporation, most people are getting paid by the hour. So let's say you're working an 8-hour day. When you're working as an entrepreneur, you're not actually getting compensated hour by hour. And you have to make sure that you are also thinking about the time you need to spend on admin, the time that you need to spend on looking at your finances, doing your own marketing. So if you think about it, like you might only actually have like 3 full days to actually deliver on the services that you want to do. Maybe you use 2 extra days, which is where you're interacting with your team, or you're doing admin work, or whatever those things are. So the total amount you want to make, let's say in a month, and you divide that into weeks. So let's say now you have your number of how much you want to make in a week. You actually have to divide that based off of 3 days, not necessarily 5 days. And then you have to think, okay, what is like best case scenario, worst case scenario? So maybe instead of charging people based on your day rates that you figured out for 3 days, maybe you increase that. So in a worst case scenario, if I don't have 3 days worth of work, I can still like hit my income goals. So when I first heard this woman say that, it was like both an aha moment, but it was also like a very big slap in the face, because I was like, okay, I'm totally doing things wrong. And I'm like, if these are the numbers I need to charge, like who am I actually, who's my target market now? Like clearly my target market is not someone who just wants to go to a luncheon for 2,500 yen on a Sunday. Like I have to start looking at maybe at corporations that have a budget this big, or I need to work with people who have more money than they have time, for example. People who are looking for a very specific quick results, as somebody who's just kind of curious about learning, about things in Japan. So it really just knowing those numbers and having that like tangible understanding of what I needed to achieve, that totally shifted how I was thinking of who I need to approach and how I need to do things with my marketing. And it just really changed a lot of things for me. So that was my very detailed answer to your question.
Good. All right. Well, it's clearly paying off for you. But here we have a comment in the comment box, that said, successful businesses start with this kind of low price or free model. So would you say, looking back now, was the way that you had started, was it necessarily wrong, or was there also benefit from starting that way? And you're talking about an evolution, or would you advise people to start with an understanding of what you've just explained and to go from there?
Yeah, so I'm actually curious about this comment about the successful businesses start with this model, low price or free. I
Hmm.
think that, again, if you have something bigger to sell, then
Yep.
having something low price or free, that's essentially the way that people get to know you and kind of
Right.
understand if they
Yeah.
want to work with you. But you have to have the things behind that. I didn't have the
Yeah.
additional things. I was just kind of like, oh, here's free info of this, and here's a 2,500 yen workshop, or here's a,
Yeah.
Ichimayen course, for example, that they could buy
Hmm.
digitally. I wasn't really selling people on bigger things. And also another thing to note is that that can't be your bread and butter, right? So your bread and butter is not going to come from doing very low priced, initial starter things. Like your bread and butter has to come from something else and bigger.
Yeah.
And I think that you don't necessarily have to start with that. I think that starting a business could just easily mean just finding that one client who wants to pay you like a good amount of money for a service. You
Hmm.
can start with that. You don't have to be providing free things or other elements to get people to know your business. So yeah, as we're saying, like I think that business wise in terms of transaction, like starting with just getting one client and having the business transaction and then segueing into doing the digital work, I think that from a business perspective makes more sense maybe than actually doing what I did, which was starting the digital way and then trying to go into doing bigger ticket things later.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. So,
Yeah.
in essence, clearly what we understand is, when we do our business, we want to support and be useful to as many people as possible. But really what we're learning from this point here is, but you need to work with people that are also going to be supportive of you and your sustainability in your business,
Yeah.
right? And trying to find that balance between what the best, kind of customer or client would be, for your own future is a very key element of successfully establishing yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's now shift to something else. So two more points before we move into our breakout session.
Yeah.
So, digital services and marketing. So firstly, digital services, and especially online training. I myself have been doing this for the past 3 years or so, maybe even 2 years, but clearly COVID has changed everything in terms of the way that I'm doing my business with training by now getting into e-learning as the first step and then live trainings thereafter, right? But you started this also from an early point. So explain what you could about the creation of online training, digital services. What is it that you do? You've done well. And let's also now talk about the future. What's the future of that, do you think?
For digital things. So what I had done specifically for digital products was creating online courses. So
Hmm.
that meant, needing to know, I mean, you've gone through this too. Like if you want to make a course look a certain way or have a certain type of quality, like you need a lot of different tools you have to figure out how to use. It could
Yep.
be getting the right camera, getting the right lighting, understanding about uh, tech software, about how to use, editing tools.
Yep.
Maybe it means using animation, learning how to use Canva for how to create your, just like the PDFs that you might give people in their learning process,
Hmm.
or the covers that go on to each of the videos. And
Yep.
then on top of that, you have to know about things like instructional design too. So, what is the actual result that you're trying to give somebody, and then working back from that, like what are going to be the key modules in the course that you're creating, and
Hmm.
also how can you break it down in a way that's easier for people to understand. So, going off on that, I think that the future is probably going to be formats. I think the formats are really going to change. I think that it used to be that selling an online course was like, you can sell like a one hour video lecture, but then it starts to be like people don't like to sit there and watch like an entire hour video. Like maybe you want to have modules that are more bite-sized pieces, like key takeaways from 10-minute videos. And I feel
Yep.
like it's still getting shorter. Like sometimes people just want to show up on social media and watch a Facebook live, or go on Instagram and watch an Instagram live. So I think that it's going to change in the way where um, people are going to start to use more social media tools. So, maybe it's just about charging people a rate to be able to have access to like a Facebook group where you put your modules into that and people can interact with it and watch the videos. So I kind of feel
So
like
more
we're,
membership oriented.
yeah, membership oriented. I also think people are looking for more authenticity in the sense that I don't think they care so much about, if you have a beautiful looking, video as much as they do where they
Mhm.
feel like they can connect with you and that they're seeing, a person in their natural space, talking
Yeah.
about a topic. So, yeah, I think it's becoming about how can we have more human connection via social media tools, and how can it just be an easier bite-sized pieces of information that people can learn. I think
Mhm.
that's the direction that we're going in.
Okay. Can you more specifically comment on what have you done in terms of digital online learning that you're most proud of? Or, what is your Jimanbanashi when it comes to, hey, I did this, I created this, I sold this, people are using it.
Yeah, so you know what? I Now that you're asking me this, I realize that I don't have any
Mhm.
digital products that I'm selling right now because it was all the things
Okay.
I had done were with my previous business, but or
Right.
my initial health related business on Girl on Bliss. But I was really proud that I had created this entire course on food energetics, which is basically macrobiotics and learning about yin
Mhm.
and yang for holistic health. And, I was having people send me messages that they had been losing weight and making health strides from that particular course. And also, the
Great.
feedback I loved was like, wow, like I've tried so many diets, but you say things in a different way and it helps them with the behavioral aspect of trying to be healthier. So I think that was just really rewarding. It wasn't just like, wow, people bought this and that's really cool. But it was also like, wow, like the feedback I'm getting, it's really making a difference for people. And when I segued from doing the initial health business into Thrive Tokyo, which is what I do now, I actually wrote a book about those concepts that were in those modules. And I felt like that gave me a really good sense of closure because at the
Mhm.
time I was like, oh, I feel like people need more help with cross-cultural training and transition. But, I was really hanging on to doing the health related things. So just being able to have all the elements into that book, it really made me feel great about having something packaged that people could make a lot of use out of, but also gave me the closure that I needed so that I could move into the
Move
different,
on to your
yeah,
next
move
business.
on to the next thing in
Great.
business.
Okay. And so now lastly, let's talk about this. So I think, Catherine, one thing that when I look at what you are doing and how you are conducting your business, one thing that is very clear is that you spend a lot of good effort on developing your marketing, your image. Your website is very clean. It's very clear with your image, your messaging. You talk very much about, using other tools such as Facebook and Instagram. So let me ask you this. What is working most for you in terms of all the things that could be done within marketing? What do you think you're doing that is leading to the development of new clients and, the continuation and the growth of your business?
Yeah, I think that tools that are helping the most business wise is definitely
Mhm.
LinkedIn. So I think because the people who I'm targeting the most with working with corporations and also people who are professionals, I feel like they use LinkedIn a lot more. So I feel like posting and interacting on that particular platform has been the most helpful from a business perspective. But
Okay.
I think in terms of all the other elements I do, they're all important for a different reason.
Mhm.
So having the branding, of course, is really important, and in terms of like the type of images that are used, and the structure of a website, and the copy is also really important too. I'm always tweaking copy. I really like words and
Mhm.
language, and trying to take it from. I always try to see how can I take words and not just make it like a generic, like I'm a cross-cultural trainer type of thing, but like what kind of spin can I put on it? I think that's kind of really fun with the to have kind of a voice that translates digitally. So yeah, I would say like the things that I do, I feel I do well because I get good feedback on it is usually writing. So I send newsletters and I get replies to newsletters about, people liking the content, or I get replies to things that I post on social media. So I think that the written format of what I do is really good. The things that I could probably do more of, but I don't necessarily know how much it'll help or not until I try it, is maybe being on video more. So not being on video in terms of like pre-recorded things, but like showing up on Facebook Lives, for example, or doing Instagram Live.
Right.
So I think that, having the written format is really great because people connect with the message. But I think ultimately when it comes time to working with someone, if someone can actually see how you're like when you're talking, I think that gives people more of a comfort because they already kind of sense what it'll be like to talk to you when you're doing a call about working together.
Yep.
So yeah, I would say, I mean, it's all important. It's all part of the bigger marketing scheme, right? Is to have all of the different elements that are working together. But those would be my answers. I think business wise, a lot comes from LinkedIn, at least for me. And moving forward, I would probably try more like, showing up on lives. The only thing is I don't want to put on lipstick, and I feel like I have to put my lipstick on before I go on my live.
When you're getting ready for a video, I mean, you have to.
Yeah, I have to get ready for a video.
You have to
It's so
get
much
ready as
easier
if you're
to just
going
write
out.
something. Yeah, it's nice to type and send it out,
yeah.
but if I have to, go on video, I'm like, oh no, I have to look like my image on the on the website that I have. So
it takes more preparation work.
it does. It does.
So you've mentioned just LinkedIn and newsletters. Let me just go back to that. So
Sure.
when you're saying LinkedIn is really good for your business and that's where you're finding clients. Now you're in Japan, but you're focusing on a lot of non-Japanese clients and that's why they're on LinkedIn? Or are you also finding Japanese companies and Japanese people as well, is equally as well on LinkedIn? How's that working?
Oh, that's a great question. So I actually always post in English. So I would say that the people who connect with me the most are definitely foreign residents or people who are planning to come to Japan. And the people I connect with for like L&D, which is learning and development and HR, is usually like maybe a foreigner who's been living in Japan for a while and who works at a company.
More Gaishike or Japanese companies or
both.
both? Okay.
Yeah. So some are people who are placed in a Japanese company, and some are people who are placed in a global company that's based in Japan.
Sure. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, to be honest, I haven't really, like, I don't know how it would change or what type of successes I would have if I had been posting in Japanese, for example.
Okay. But basically posting in English and working primarily with a non-Japanese community,
Yeah.
LinkedIn is really helpful for you.
Yeah. And also keeping in mind that it's not just about the people you're connected with on LinkedIn who see your posts. It's about who they know also. So, I've gotten referrals from people on LinkedIn. So the end client is not necessarily the person who saw my LinkedIn posts, right?
In your newsletter, are you sending newsletters out through an email list, or how are you doing newsletters?
So I have an email list. So basically how I get people onto my email list is I have some freebies on my website. I have a few different freebies. The one that I put on my website right now is about resources that people can use to transition to Japan. So I think the primary thing that I'm looking for when people come to my website are basically people who are new here from a B2C perspective. But I also have some other free things that I put out on Facebook ads. And that is like, free 3-part business masterclass that people can learn about workplace cultural concepts. And another one is I have one on conversation starters that people can use to learn about the people who they work with in their office. Gotcha. So those are the two things. And so when people sign up for those, then they're on my mailing list. And I send out newsletters at least biweekly. Biweekly, I mean every other week. So every other week. So at least twice per month, I'm
Mhm.
consistently sending things. And the core things that always go out are trivia questions. And the reason I chose trivia questions is because I realized that I have a mix of people on my newsletter. Some people are maybe their background is a spouse and they're here just learning to live in Japan. And I have another person who might be a professional, and I might have someone who's also working in HR for a corporation who's been in Japan for a while and doesn't need like new info. So the trivia questions are great because it's a way of either testing people who are new here or showing people who have been here for a while what foreigners don't know in Japan.
Right.
So that's kind of like the thought process behind the trivia. And in between the trivia newsletters that go out every other Tuesday, I also like to send out newsletters on any kind of like recent new things I've heard that maybe via a client that was interesting or something I read that was interesting, something that just provides value that I've been thinking about lately, and just something to kind of engage people.
And you, Catherine, you yourself, you're writing this. It's completely your own, right? Do you have any support creating this newsletter?
No, I wish I had some support because so I have support for the trivia questions. Yes.
Okay.
But I don't have support for the other kind of like newsletters that are from, things that I've thought of or picked up from work stuff. I write all of those.
Okay. But that's basically to say that that's your ideas, and it's your way of interacting with people that want to know more about you. Or you try to attract attention through your website, and then you are developing a bit of a relationship with people through your newsletter.
Yes.
How often does that newsletter then lead to actual business? Do you know?
You know what? I'm actually trying to figure out the stats on that right now.
Yeah.
I have a guy who just signed up for a call with me for next week, and he's been on my mailing list for 1 year. And so he came on my mailing list about a half a year before he came to Japan, and he's been in Japan for about a half a year now. And so now he's like ready to reach out. Right. So I think what it is, it's hard. I think what's hard about marketing is like you can get someone who contacts you via newsletter, but maybe the first place they saw you was on social media or in a Facebook group or on a podcast or something else. So there's so many different touch points that it's hard from an analytics perspective to know, okay, this person signed up from here, but is that the first place where they actually, came to you from? Right?
But basically the important point of what you just said is multiple touch points. Having multiple touch points that work. I know that I've received business because somebody has seen me in different places, and it's seeing you in one place and then in another place. And that's kind of building the momentum that leads people to initially making that contact.
Exactly. I had one guy I talked to, it was just about a business startup too. He said, "Hey, Catherine, like I heard about you before, and I was like, I thought it would be cool to reach out to you. And then I saw you 3 times this past week, like on my friend's feed, and then on this podcast, and then on this other thing. And I was like, okay, I have to talk to her now." Right. So I think it's really about having that varieties that is key. And unfortunately, just not knowing specifically like how many touch points people are seeing before they meet you. But, the guy who is on my newsletter, he found my newsletter through through a Facebook group. And so he's been nurtured for we call it nurturing, and for marketing is like you're having someone get to know you. But what prompted him to actually contact me wasn't the newsletter. It was because I had posted again in that same Facebook group, and he saw it and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I should reach out to her." So yeah, again, having multiple touch points, I think, is really important.
Awesome. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for being the guest today on Entreprenippponial. I think in this conversation, this initial conversation, we have learned about how you made that very first step into business. We've definitely delved into how you've evolved your pricing strategy. And I think anybody that sees the way that you do your marketing, anybody that has listened to this conversation can understand how you also have really been able to use digital tools and social media to create a business that is thriving in Tokyo, Thrive Tokyo. So thank you so much. Yeah.
And if you have any side comments, you think of something later, feel free to reach out to me. You can contact me on social media. You can send me a message via my website, thrivetokyo.com. Happy to answer later.
Thank you very much.